Hello everybody and welcome to the third in our series of Get AI Ready webinars. And in this edition, I'll be taking you through the announcements from Dreamforce and looking at the features that are there for you to use right now and those that are making their way through the various pilots and betas that are the precursor to a GA Salesforce product. We're at 16:01, so I think we'll get started. Okay, first off, a little housekeeping. We always say on these AI webinars that with responsible use of AI, it's very important to be transparent, and this is no different to any other situation. So everything I'm talking about today is based on Dreamforce sessions that I attended or Salesforce announcements that I've seen afterwards. The nature of webinars is that they represent a particular point in time, so it's entirely possible that things have changed since I saw them. And in the case of pilots, it's highly likely that they'll have changed by the time they go GA. Otherwise, there'd be no point in having a pilot. So always talk to your AE and make your purchasing decisions based on generally available features. I'll look at questions at the end. Feel free to post them in the questions widget as they occur to you, but I won't be looking there until later. And in the interest of full transparency, all the non-screenshot images, such as the one below that was on the housekeeping page, these were generated by Stable Diffusion 2.1 at Hugging Face on the short link that you can see there based on prompts that I supplied. They're easy to spot because they're all steampunk style. Okay, first off, let's take a look at the features that are currently launched and ready to use. The first is the Einstein 1 platform. So this is something that you'll be using already, but as it's mostly under the hood, you probably won't realize that. So the key aspect, I would say, as part of this platform that we should really need to care about is the metadata framework. So this spans all of the clouds and essentially provides a common language that allows you to connect data and capabilities in different clouds. Building tools against metadata rather than data ensures they can be used with data from any cloud. So for example, in the Winter 24 release of Salesforce, you can trigger flows based on changes to data cloud records rather than it having to be something that's in the Salesforce database. This metadata layer includes marketing and commerce cloud, and up until now, a lot of us know they required dedicated connectors to hook into the Salesforce core. So the idea is all of your data is available to all of your, or will be available to all of your tools, probably not all available just yet, probably not all exposed, but it will be all available rather than having to copy it around from place to place, have multiple copies or write custom integrations that pull things on demand. So as Patrick Stokes, who's the EVP of Product and Industries Marketing, put it, Salesforce have decoupled the underlying storage mechanism of Salesforce from the platform. But what that means is there's no longer the need for everything to sit inside the CRM database in order to be used. The next big announcement is quite an unusual one for Salesforce. It's not often you see free licenses, in this case to Data Cloud and Tableau. So these licenses are available for Enterprise and Unlimited Edition, and you do need to play your part. You need to do some purchasing theatre and request a quote for it and sign a quote for a $0 SKU. Restrictions do apply. I'd have a look at the knowledge article at the short link shown to see the restrictions because there are a few associated with it. The Tableau license is a Tableau Cloud Creator for Data Cloud, another a long line of licenses that rolls glibly off the tongue. And even though it's restricted, you'll be able to carry out a lot of standard tasks like managing users, creating and sharing data sources, creating new reports, editing existing workbooks. And on the Data Cloud side of things, you get the Data Cloud Provisioning SKU, which again, you have to request through your AE. But this includes 1 terabyte of storage, 1 Data Cloud admin, 100 internal users, which is quite a lot, really, for nothing, and 5 integration users. Now, Data Cloud's usage-based rather than necessarily license-based. So this also includes 250,000 credits, data services credits. So these allow you to do things like ingest the data from multiple sources. So for example, if you've got more than one Salesforce org, you can pull all that into a single Data Cloud instance, and then you can unify those profiles. Salesforce said the credits should allow you to unify up to 10,000 profiles and calculate insights about them. What you don't get, however, is the segmentation or activation targets functionality. So what that means is you can't take automated action based on this data. What you can do is examine the data, determine if there is value there in having this unified data, and if you think there is, then you can easily upgrade to a full data cloud license. And if you're on unlimited edition, you'll get 2.5 million data services credits rather than 250,000, which, assuming that the consumption of credits scales linearly, should allow you to unify up to 100,000 profiles. They may not scale linearly. I don't actually know that level of detail. But why are these important? Because this is a get ready for AI. You know, what's Data Cloud got to do with this? What's the metadata layer got to do with it? It's basically, simply put, the Data Cloud is likely to be a major source of information for your AI. Either training your own models or providing the data that grounds a prompt sent to a third-party model via standard Salesforce functionality. So the more good quality data that you have, the more data from more sources that is appropriately unified, the better your AI outputs will be. So next we'll look at some of the AI cloud features around generative AI that are generally available, lots of gens in there. First up, Service Cloud Einstein. Grounded service replies. So these are suggestions for replies in customer conversations, but based on the data in your CRM. So these take the form of either knowledge article suggestions based on terms that have been seen in the conversation, or AI generated responses based on the context of the conversation. So in this screenshot, the customer's asking about resetting their password. So that's matched against a knowledge article, which can be posted in there. And there's also a suggested response of, yeah, we can take you through it step by step. So I guess depending on the value of that customer, you might decide to hold on to them as long as possible to talk them through it, and then maybe suggest they want to buy something else from you. Work summaries. So these suggest values for case fields based on the conversation that you're having with a customer. So the case fields that are populated default to the summary, issue, and resolution. You can configure those as you need to. And in the second screenshot, you can see, based on the conversation, how that summarization is presented to the service rep, who can then choose what they do with it, because there's always a human in there to decide whether or not they want to take the advice of the generative AI. And finally, on Service Cloud, we have conversation catch-up. So this is a real-time summary of the current conversation. So that's either presented to an agent when a customer is transferred to them. I think we'd all like to see more people have systems like this, so we don't have to re-identify ourselves and explain our problem again every time we pass through to a different department. Or to a supervisor. If they start monitoring the conversation, they can be immediately caught up on what's going on rather than have to try to figure it out. Sales Cloud next. Starting with call summaries. So this is an AI generated summary from a call recording. It's English language only, and it also requires a transcript, which suggests a couple of things to me. Firstly, it suggests it's probably not summarizing the audio recording, but it's actually summarizing the text transcripts, because that's what generative AI is very good at. But secondly, it may not be the most accurate summary, because if you've ever looked at the transcript of a call, especially one taken automatically, the quality can be quite variable. So this may not be a silver bullet. Salesforce also say these are sometimes not generated for lengthy calls. So I guess that means don't rely on them always being there. You click the Create Call Summary button at the top right of the Recording Summary tab, and assuming that's successful, you'll see something along the lines of this screen grab. So it'll give you some customer feedback, a call summary, and what next steps you might want to do. Sales emails next. So this is something I can actually demo, which would be nice. If you're interested in a deeper dive on this, then you can check out the post on my blog, which is at the short link shown. But what I'm going to do is jump across to my Salesforce demo org. So this isn't a real contact. I should say that before I do anything. So I've gone into a contact record, and over here on activity, I'm going to click on the email button. And that's going to open up the email. I'm just going to expand that out so everybody can see a bit more detail. So we've got my email. It's associated with Alison Yates, who is a contact who works for Morpon Brothers. And I've got a button down here, which is Draft with Einstein. So if I click on that, at the moment, I've only got 5 pre-configured prompts, which I can't change any aspects of. So I pick one of these. I'm going to send a meeting invite. Because I'm sending a meeting invite, also gives me the opportunity to, if this is about a product, or I want to pitch a product, or I'm referring to a product that I know they've bought before, I can go and find a record. So I'll go for starter kit at this point in time. This pulls in the product name and the product description. So in this case, it tells a little bit about the product description. And I can put in here a little bit of extra information if I want, say perfect for small companies, if we assume that Morpon Brothers is a small company. Then I click continue here, and this then goes off and does its thing, generating the response from the AI tool. So we get a warning at the top. This tool uses generative AI, can be inaccurate or harmful, so always being cautious. And then it's pulled in information about me, about the contact, but it's also pulled in about the product, including the bit that I just put in there, small companies, making it perfect for small companies like Morpon Brothers. That's pretty cool. If I don't like this, I can draft another one. But if I draft another one now, all that will do is insert it into this again. So I'll have 2 of them then. So this isn't something where it's automatically replacing. The UI isn't kind of helping me in that way. So if I don't want this, I have to back up and delete the whole lot, and then I have to go in and create it again. And notice that obviously it can't do everything because it doesn't know when I want to meet. So I have to customize date time. So there's anything that the AI is expecting you to fill in, it will send that. So make sure you check it, because it's going to be a bit embarrassing if a customer ends up seeing those. Not only will it look sloppy, but also they'll know that you were using AI to generate it. And if you didn't tell them that, they might not be overly happy. So that is sales emails. And there's also some generative AI features for marketing and commerce clouds. So marketing has the content generator, which creates copy for a subject line or a body, applying your brand's personality and identity as known about in Marketing Cloud. And this is available in Einstein, Copy Insights, and Content Builder. And in Commerce Cloud, you can bulk generate product text fields in the language of your store, B2B or B2C. And you can also provide instructions and linked references. But again, you have to do those in English, because that's what the AI understands. So that brings me to the end of what's available for use. Now let's have a little look at what's coming down the line. So first one, and a little code diversion for me, for the developer, any developers that have joined the call. Einstein for developers. So this is in beta. I'm not going to demo it because it's very code centric and it's not overly exciting really, but essentially you describe what you want in natural language English, and the generative AI writes the code for you. This is an extension that you install into VS Code, and you also need to enable it in the org that you want to deploy that code to. Always read the terms and conditions, and I'm going to show you why. So here are the terms and conditions. They're on GitHub. They're accessible when you're installing the extension and when you're configuring the system to say that you are happy to turn this on. And I'd like to draw your attention to a couple of things. First off, there's the definition of submitted code. Prompts you submit to the extension. Okay, that sounds kind of reasonable. It's obviously not a no retention. But B is basically all the code within your project that it might want to use to provide additional context to the model. So that's there's a bit more scope there. But then the bit that I think is a bit more worrying is term 3. So you'll see there that you are giving Salesforce a license to use your code to train the model forever, and you can't revoke it. So if you're considering turning this on, then make sure you and your organization are happy with it. Personally speaking, I'm not, so I'm only going to be playing around with this in my open source projects, which are already public, and I let people do whatever they want with. Next, probably the biggest announcement from Dreamforce, Einstein 1 Copilot, which fittingly is in pilot, as it should be, as it's a Copilot. So this is described as your conversational assistant for every Salesforce application. So essentially what we're talking about here is a chatbot style interface, but it can do more than just kind of reply to your questions and give you information. Now it can do that, It can pull information from elsewhere in your org. If you ask it to go and get you contact information for Alison Yates, it will be able to go and do that without necessarily needing to navigate to the record. But it can also take action on your behalf, and that can include kicking off your existing automation. So your automation that's already in place, all that investment that you've got in there, that'll all be reusable within the Einstein Copilot paradigm. And it can also be extended, which I'll talk a little bit more about shortly. Okay, so this is what Copilot looks like in an org. So bear in mind that it's in pilot, so it's almost certainly not going to look like this when it goes GA. But in a customer conversation, we have the customer saying, thanks, could you send me an update? They want to know what's happened, want a record of what's happened based on the conversation. So the rep goes to the Copilot section on the right and effectively makes the same request in natural language. Can we send an email that captures all of the actions? Copilot then comes up with this action plan saying, yeah, we can do that. Here's some suggested actions, list them out. And as the user, I can then choose, am I happy with this? Do I want to take those actions? I can take one or more by checking the boxes, or I can choose to refine it, or I can presumably just not do any of that. So Copilot is configured via Copilot Studio, which is also in pilot, and that has 3 strands. So the first is Prompt Builder. So here's a screenshot of the latest incarnation of Prompt Builder that I've seen. The prompt is defined in the first section, and then notice these highlighted in red here. We've got these merge fields, 3 braces. So they started off, they looked more like Visualforce merge fields, a brace and an exclamation mark to open and a closing brace. Now they seem to have 3 braces in them. Again, that might change. But these merge fields are used to pull information from Salesforce. So a couple of things to note about that. First, the user that executes the prompt must have permission to access that data. Otherwise, they won't get that data. And also, it's not just records. So the first one is record, contact.firstname. The second one is a data cloud data graph. And also, you can execute a flow and have it return some structured data that gets used in the prompt as well. So it should be quite extensible in that respect. So the user then chooses the record to preview the prompt with, and the grounded prompt on the left is then displayed, and that's basically expanded up those merge fields. So the JSON you can see there is the data cloud, data retrieve, real-time personalization model, yada, yada, yada. So that's all the information that's going to be pulled through based on that record. Once that's there, there's a generate button here. Clicking on that, it produces the AI, it sends it off to the model, gets the response, displays the response, so you can see highlighted there some key information about it, and there's also a toxicity rating at the bottom which says, yeah, it's pretty harmless. Also notice on the right hand side, there's additional configuration options around the style, the tone, the length of the response, which model to use, etc. So remember, this is the prompt builder, so users aren't going to have access to those type of settings. This is more the kind of data scientist types that are configuring these prompts, playing around with these prompts, previewing, etc., and deciding what needs to be there. So they'll do all the tweaking, then they'll make this available. That'll be a lot more fixed for the user, because you don't necessarily want them saying, I want to change this, that, and the other. The one thing I kind of think would be good for users to have access to is the style and the tone, because depending on which customer it is, you may find with some customers you have to be very formal. There may be a large mature organization that's accustomed to formality, but then if you're talking to a kind of hip young advertising agency, you might want a more casual tone. I guess they can still change it themselves, but maybe it'd be nice if we see a bit more configuration about that going forward. Skill Builder is the area that we probably know least about right now. I did get a demo, but I'm fairly sure those were actually just mock-ups rather than anything that I was actually being shown live. That was a month ago though, so I'm assuming it's come on since then. But basically the concept is that we can extend Copilot's kind of areas of expertise through skills. And a skill is a collection of specific capabilities, and those capabilities are effectively things you can ask it to do. So you'll have a skill in a particular area, and there'll be a load of kind of underlying actions that it can take for you. So key thing is, again, these can include existing automations, so Flow, Apex, prompt templates you've defined in the previous step, or standard actions. And the way that a skill is made available to Einstein Copilot is through the description. So the detailed description is used to train the model. That means when it receives a natural language request, it can match that up against the skill that's available and kick that off. Also in the demo that I saw at Dreamforce, they talked a lot about being able to limit skills to specific users, so via profiles or permission sets, which makes a lot of sense to me. For example, you wouldn't necessarily want the marketing team making changes to orders without a good reason. This is a screenshot of an order management skill. This came off the main keynote, actually. So this is basically order management skill, and as you can see, there's like 5 different capabilities around orders, and the automations that are in there. There's some Apex, there's some flow, there's a prompt, there's a standard action. So yeah, the idea is that you can kind of wrap those, package those in such a way that they can be used by Copilot. And I also think that this is probably somewhere where they'll, I would hope there'd be these kind of things could be offered on the App Exchange, because if you've built a bunch of additional skills around relatively standard functionality, or possibly around custom functionality that's available through an App Exchange package, it'd be quite nice to be able to distribute those to everybody that's interested in it and maybe build a business off the back of that. So it'd be interesting to see how that turns out. And then the final component of Copilot Studio is the model builder. So this allows you to create your own create your own AI model, essentially, either using one of Salesforce's proprietary models or to integrate with your own model for generative or predictive purposes. I won't read the full list of models, of supported models, supported vendors, but I think I heard it was Amazon SageMaker was going to be the one available at launch. Moving on to our final topic. And really, this is the one that I was most keen to see in action at Dreamforce. And that's the Einstein trust layer. And as I've mentioned in earlier webinars, we do trust Salesforce. We trust Salesforce with our data every day. And we should trust them. They've, generally speaking, done a good job. But what it shouldn't be is blind trust. So we still need to know the details of how Salesforce is defending our data, so we can make sure it's adequately protected. As we always say, responsible use of AI includes transparency, and that applies at every step. So if you've been the slightest bit interested in Salesforce and generative AI, you'll have seen this picture plenty of times, the Einstein GPT trust layer. So this is the thing that makes sure that your use of AI is as safe as, I think it's fair to say, as safe as Salesforce can make it. They obviously can't make it 100% safe, but they've put a lot of guardrails around things, a lot of protection in place. And I think this is the real kind of USP and why you would probably go through Salesforce to use generative AI rather than building your own integrations, although you obviously have that option. So what I'm going to do now is look through a few of those steps as what actually goes on, starting with the secure data retrieval dynamic grounding step. So they're kind of intertwined. The dynamic grounding means that we're pulling information based on the use case that we're currently in, so based on the person that we're dealing with, based on their background and history. And we're doing secure data retrieval to pull information from CRM, from Data Cloud, as we need to. So here's an example prompt template with some merge fields highlighted in the sort of turquoisey blue there, the 3 braces. So again, directly pulled from records, and then we've got a flow that could be returning JSON information, or as we saw in a couple of previous slides, the graph of data from Data Cloud. So once that retrieval takes place, the prompt is now hydrated with the data referenced by the merge fields. But again, user needs access to that data. I don't know what happens actually. We didn't get into that in the demo that I saw. What happens if the user hasn't got access? Is it just blank? Does it error? I guess I would expect it to be blank, but I don't know. That's something we'd have to figure out once once we get more sight of this. But at this point in time, we've retrieved some data from Salesforce, somewhere in Salesforce, and we're using that to dynamically ground the prompt so that there's context and we get the best response. So we then move on to data masking. So if you look at the hydrated prompt, there's some PII in there, which we don't really want to be sending off to a third party. you know, the fact that it's the White Hart Hotel that I work for, the fact that it's David Brent from Wernham Hogg. You know, we know that when it's OpenAI, there is a zero retention policy, but OpenAI are based in the States. So do we really want to be sending this data to the States for processing and then getting it back? Feels like we could have some kind of GDPR issues if we do that. So data masking takes the hydrated prompt, finds the PII, and then replaces it with fairly meaningless, but also identifiable tokens. So company 1, we know is White Hart Hotel. Company 2, we know is Wernham Hogg. This identifiable aspect is important because when the prompt comes back, company 1 will be changed back to the White Hart Hotel before that is displayed to me, the user. So the following items are subject to data masking, depending on where you are in the world. So everywhere in the world will mask names, phone numbers, emails, locations, credit card numbers. Always say you probably don't want to be putting credit card numbers in Salesforce, but if the user's got a free text field and they're talking to you about the credit card, you can't stop them typing it in, even if you don't want them to. And also international bank account numbers. And if you're in the US, it'll also include social security, individual taxpayer IDs, driver's license, passport, and bank account number. So I'm hoping this is an area we'll be able to extend based on our specific requirements and provide, you know, I want this additional thing masked, and here is the pattern that it follows. Therefore, can you mask that in any prompts that you see? I haven't seen any details about that, but it feels like a really likely space to be able to configure things. And then there are additional guardrails applied around the prompt. So if we go back and think about our prompt template, this starts out with a set of static instructions, and then there's some pre-selected data that we're going to pull from Salesforce based on the contact. So we're just going to pull that data. It will just come from a different contact, and it will be information about their cases. So that will change, but we'll always try and pull that information back. There may also be some information that the end user provided during the conversation. So if we've had some context in there and we need to have some of that go in there as well, then that will be pulled in there. So this has been hydrated, it's been masked. So this is the prompt that we looked at earlier on. But then there'll be some system guardrails added to the start of the prompt to instruct the model how to behave. And then finally, some additional guardrails added to the end, including prompt injection defense to stop any user input from changing the behavior of the model. So this gives us, we put it in beforehand, but that user input comes in, we can't necessarily control that. We don't know what that's necessarily going to look like. So we then come in at the end again and make sure that that's not influencing anything. And of course, you know, Salesforce has the non-retention agreement that I've mentioned with OpenAI. So once this prompt has been processed, it'll be discarded by OpenAI, not retained to train the model any further. So here's a prompt with some example guardrails in place, which you can see highlighted in orange at the top and the bottom. So these are exactly the kind of instructions that you should add to every prompt if you're going to use the output in any meaningful way. But rather than you having to remember to do these, you know, and a lot of this is, you know, relatively obvious, treat equally any individuals. When you do not have the information, don't make assumptions based on stereotype. That's the kind of behavior that you want, but you don't necessarily want to have to remember to put that into every single one of your prompts. Because if you think about us all having to do that, it's like millions of times that we're having to put the same information in. So this is really handy. I think that Salesforce is adding this in. Obviously, there's nothing to stop you having guardrails in your own prompt template as well, but there'll be additional ones put in there. Something that I always like to call out with this is that things like OpenAI charge by the token, which is kind of roughly 4-ish characters, so charged by the bit of a word. And the more guardrails you have, the more information that goes into that prompt, the more it's going to cost you. So just be aware of that. I've never really found it to be expensive. This is definitely where you want to spend the money, but make sure you understand what the impact is. And then once the response comes back, you've then got the toxicity detection. So what we're talking about here is something that's coming, as I understand it, in a future release, again, based on Dreamforce, but this wasn't there yet in the Einstein trust layer. So even when I'm doing a predefined prompt that I cannot control, the toxicity detection isn't happening in this way. As I'm sure there's something happening that's not happening this way as part of the Einstein trust layer. So the response from AI is examined to see if it exhibits any of these behaviors. The detection criteria, they're rule-based, and they're also an AI model as part of that. And these are currently in English only. So again, I'd hope that we're able to add our own rules to extend the toxicity detection. Feels like we might have specific requirements based on where we're doing business, based on specific local regulations. Thinking about things like free speech, the rules around that are different in different countries around the world. So it feels like an area where we need a little bit more control than just leaving it entirely to Salesforce. So hopefully that will be coming at some point in time. Then there's the feedback framework. So in every agent interaction, there is feedback to be had. So it's either directly through a thumbs up, thumbs down type of concept, or the user is giving feedback when they choose to use, change, edit, or discard the response. So that's all useful information. So again, in a future release, this information will be added to the feedback store and used to drive improvement. As mentioned earlier, prompts aren't retained, so the OpenAI model stays the same. So this is about improving the prompt rather than the model. So it's about improving what they send to the model next time. So for example, if the guardrails don't have the appropriate clarity that's leading to a good response, Salesforce should be able to see that they're getting lots of editing, lots of changing, maybe lots of thumbs down, and they can do something about that. And finally, there is the audit trail. So responsible use of AI, again, means you need to know exactly what was sent, who sent it, and what the response was. So that's the kind of information that you've got here. This will be timestamp metadata. You know who the user was, so who the user was and when they sent it, what the prompt was, including the grounding data, what the response from the AI was. And then this is also going to retain the toxicity scores. So you can see what kind of response it was. Did it flag anything up? Should it have flagged everything up? If it turns out that did have certain attributes that weren't ideal, you can go back and look at the toxicity scores and try and figure out why that wasn't flagged at that point in time. And there's also the user feedback is going to be in there, so you can see what the user thought about it. So did they know that it had, it was a bit dubious, it had some higher than wanted toxicity scores, and they went with it anyway. I've not seen any details of how we access this, but in my view, it needs to be really simple to allow us to access this audit trail, because I can see we'll be needing to show it to our stakeholders in the event that they have any concerns. And I feel like at the moment, there's quite a lot of caution, shall we say, and nervousness about exactly how these tools might be used. So that brings me to the end of the prepared content. So I'm going to go and see if we have any questions. And at this moment in time, it looks like we do not have any questions. Obviously, if any questions occur to you, please reach out to us, info@brightgen.com, or reply to any of the emails that you get regarding this session. So, as I mentioned, this is the final entry in our Get AI Ready series of webinars. So is this the end? Is this the end? Of course it isn't. It's not goodbye, it's au revoir. So we're in the formative stages of working on the next round of webinars, and the plan with those is we're going to run them in conjunction with other companies in the Credera family. And what this will allow us to do is look at AI considerations, kind of in the wider business landscape from a higher level. There'll still be a strong Salesforce presence there, because obviously we're a Salesforce partner, and that's what we're mainly focused on. But we'll be trying to lift it up a bit away from the direct technical and Salesforce configuration, and more with a business head on. We're thinking we'll probably start that webinar series. We'll try and get one in before Christmas, around the end of November, start of December. So look out for an invite in the next few weeks if you've attended any of our webinars in the past. And I have one last look in questions to see if there's anything in there, which there isn't. So thanks very much for joining, everyone. Hope to see you at the next one as soon as we know when it is. Thanks very much for attending. Bye all. Have a good rest of the day.